The call came at 7:43 in the morning on a Thursday. I know the exact time because I was standing at my kitchen counter with my coffee going cold beside me and my phone face up on the granite, and when the number appeared on the screen I remember thinking it was early for HR to be calling. HR never calls before 9. HR calls between 2 and 4 in the afternoon on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, in my experience, because that is when the world of human resources has processed enough of the day to deal with its complications. 7:43 on a Thursday was not that. I answered. The voice on the other end belonged to a woman named Sandra Chu, Director of Human Resources at Meridian Financial Group, where I had worked as a senior credit analyst for 6 years. Sandra had a calm, professional voice that I had heard exactly 4 times in my career, twice during routine reviews, once when our division was being restructured, and once when she called to tell me I'd been selected for a leadership development program. This was the 5th time. "Sarah," she said. "I need you to come in as soon as possible this morning. Before your regular start time if you can manage it." Something in the specific weight of her words made me set down my coffee. "What's happened?" I asked. A pause that lasted just long enough to tell me something significant had happened. "There's a situation we need to address in person," she said. "I'd rather not discuss it on the phone. Can you be here by 8:30? I said yes. I stood in my kitchen for 30 seconds after the call ended. Then I went to get dressed. I want to tell you what I knew and what I didn't know in that moment. I knew something was wrong. I knew it was serious enough that Sandra Chu had called me at 7:43 in the morning and used the word situation. I knew, with the particular instinct of a person who has spent 6 years analyzing financial data and reading the signals underneath the numbers, that whatever this was, it was not small. What I didn't know, what I could not have predicted, was that the situation Sandra needed to address in person was my sister. My twin sister. Serena. Who had been using my name, my credentials, and my professional identity for 3 years without my knowledge. Who had, on the previous afternoon, walked into Meridian Financial Group and tried to use them one final time. Let me start from the beginning. Because this story has one, and it matters. My name is Serafina Okafor Mitchell. Everyone calls me Sarah. I am 34 years old. I am a senior credit analyst at Meridian Financial Group in Atlanta, Georgia, a role I have held for 6 years and worked toward for the 10 years before that. I have a graduate degree in financial analysis from Emory. I have professional certifications that took years and considerable money to obtain. I have a professional reputation that I have built, maintained, and protected with the same care I bring to every financial model I construct, methodically, with attention to every variable. I also have a twin sister. Her name is Serena Okafor Mitchell. We are fraternal twins, not identical, which becomes relevant later. We were born 4 minutes apart on a February morning 34 years ago. I was first. She has never fully forgiven me for it, which was a joke when we were teenagers and became something harder to laugh at as we got older. Growing up, Serena and I were close in the way twins are close, not because we were identical in personality, which we were not, but because we were always present for each other's formation. We were there for the same childhood, the same parents, the same house, the same schools until college, the same family dinners and holidays and losses. We were witnesses to each other in the most foundational sense. The divergence started, as these things often do, not dramatically but gradually. I was the organized one. The planner. The one who made lists and kept records and understood the long game. I chose finance because I understood numbers the way some people understand music, intuitively, as a language that told the truth about things. Serena was the creative one. The spontaneous one. The one who made friends in 20 minutes and forgot appointments and approached life with an energy that was genuinely magnetic and genuinely exhausting in equal measure. She had started 3 businesses by the time she was 28, a boutique event planning company, a small online retail operation, a consulting practice of some description, and each one had ended in the specific way that businesses end when they are run by someone with vision but insufficient discipline for the administrative reality of keeping things going. I loved my sister. I want to say that clearly and early. I loved her the way you love someone who has been present at every significant moment of your formation, who shares your parents and your childhood and a particular texture of a specific family's life. The betrayal I'm about to describe did not cancel that love. It did not make her a stranger or a monster. It made her someone who had done something I could not excuse and could not stay silent about. Love is not the same as permission. The first sign appeared 2.5 years before Sandra Chu called me at 7:43 in the morning. It was small. So small that I didn't recognize it as a sign at all at the time. I received a notification from a credit monitoring service I subscribed to, the kind of baseline financial hygiene that becomes habitual when you work in credit analysis and understand, better than most people, what credit exposure can do to a person. The notification said that a hard inquiry had been made on my credit file by a commercial leasing company in Decatur. I had not applied for any commercial lease. I called the leasing company. They said a Serafina Okafor Mitchell had applied for a small commercial space, roughly 800 square feet, and listed her profession as financial consultant. I am a financial analyst, not a consultant. Close enough that if you were not me, you might not notice the distinction. I told the leasing company there had been an error. I asked them to remove the inquiry. They were cooperative. I filed a dispute with the credit bureau. I made a note of it. I did not, at that point, connect it to Serena. That was my first mistake. Not the last. Over the following months, there were other notifications. Another hard inquiry, this one from a small business loan provider. A collections notice from a vendor I had never heard of, addressed to me at an address I did not recognize. A notice from a professional association in my field indicating that a member named Serafina Okafor Mitchell had not paid her annual dues I had, in fact, paid. Each incident was small enough to explain away individually. A clerical error. An identity mix-up. The kind of administrative noise that accumulates around a person with an unusual name and a professional life that touches multiple systems. I disputed each one. I corrected each one. I documented each one. But I did not yet see the pattern. The pattern became visible 18 months in, when a colleague at work, a man named David Chen who sat 3 desks from me and specialized in small business credit, mentioned, casually, in the middle of a conversation about something else entirely, that he had received a connection request on a professional networking platform from someone with my name and credentials. Thought it was weird, he said. Since you're right there. I looked at the profile he showed me on his phone. The name was Serafina Okafor Mitchell. The credentials listed were mine, my graduate degree from Emory, my professional certifications, my years of experience. The professional title listed was Senior Credit Analyst and Independent Financial Consultant. The profile photograph was Serena. I sat very still for a moment. Then I said, "Can you forward that to me?" David forwarded it. I went to the bathroom. I stood at the sink and looked at my reflection and did the thing I do when I need to think clearly. I breathed slowly, counted the facts I knew, and resisted the impulse to react before I understood. The facts I knew: my sister had created a professional profile using my name and credentials. She had used her own photograph, which meant she had not intended for anyone who knew me to be deceived, or had not considered the possibility carefully enough. She was presenting herself as a financial professional with my qualifications. I sat with those facts for 3 days before I called her. I want to be honest about that conversation because I think it says something important about the way I handled the early stages of this. I called Serena on a Sunday evening. I told her what I had found. I told her about the professional profile, the credit inquiries, the vendor collections notice, the dues discrepancy. I laid it out factually, without accusation in my tone, in the specific way I present data to clients when I need them to understand something without becoming defensive. She was quiet through most of it. Then she said, "I was going to tell you." "Tell me what, specifically?" A pause. "I've been using your credentials on some things. Just for consulting. Just to get clients. You know I don't have the formal qualifications but I know the field, Sarah. I learned it from watching you. I just needed a way to get in the door. You're using my name and my certifications to solicit clients. Not forever. Just until I can build a track record. Serena. This is fraud. She said that word, fraud, landed badly. She got defensive. She said I was being dramatic. She said she wasn't hurting anyone. She said I could help her or I could make this difficult, and she hoped I would choose to help her. I said, I'm asking you to stop. I'm asking you to take down the profile and stop using my credentials. She said she would. She did not. Before I go further, if this story is making your jaw tighten, you are not alone. Hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every one. Now let's keep going. The 18 months between that phone call and Sandra Chu's 7:43 call were the 18 months in which I learned what it means to have your professional identity used by someone who understands it well enough to be convincing and not well enough to be careful. Serena did not take down the profile. She modified it slightly, changed the title, softened the credential language, but the architecture of deception remained. She used my name to open a consulting practice that positioned her as a financial analysis specialist. She used my certifications as the stated basis of her expertise. She used my professional reputation, 6 years of work that had made the name Serafina Okafor Mitchell mean something specific in Atlanta's financial community, as her calling card. Her clients were, in most cases, small business owners who needed financial guidance and could not afford large firms. She gave them what she could, which, to be fair, was not nothing. She had absorbed a significant amount of financial knowledge over 34 years of being my sister. But she was not a certified analyst. She was not qualified to do what she represented herself as qualified to do. And the advice she gave, in at least 2 cases that I later documented, was incorrect in ways that cost her clients money. I know this because one of those clients, a woman named Patricia Good who ran a catering business in Decatur, eventually looked up the real Serafina Okafor Mitchell online and found me. She sent me an email through my professional website, a website that clearly belonged to a different person than the one she had been working with, and asked if I had a sister. I called Patricia Good. She told me what had happened. The advice she had received. The financial decisions she had made based on it. The money she had lost. I sat with that information for 1 full day. Then I called an attorney. Her name was Vivian Cho, and she specialized in identity theft and professional fraud cases. She was 53 years old, had practiced for 25 years, and had the specific gift of being able to tell you something devastating in a way that made you feel prepared rather than destroyed. I told her everything. The full 3 years of it, the credit inquiries, the professional profile, the phone call with Serena, the subsequent continuation, Patricia Good's email, the 2 clients I had now identified who had received incorrect advice under my name. Vivian listened. She asked questions. She was quiet for a moment when I finished. Then she said, "You have documented evidence of criminal identity theft, professional fraud, and consumer harm. This is a serious matter." "I know," I said. "Before we discuss next steps, I need to ask you something. Do you want to protect yourself and address the harm, or do you want to protect your sister?" I thought about it honestly. "Both of those things are not compatible," I said. "No," she said. "They're not. Not fully." Another honest pause. "I need to protect myself," I said. "And I need to protect the people she's harmed. I can't control what happens to her as a result of that." Vivian nodded. I could feel it through the phone. "Then here's what we do," she said. What we did was build a case. Over the following 3 months, Vivian and I worked to document everything systematically. Every credit inquiry. Every fraudulent professional account. Every instance of Serena using my name and credentials that we could identify and verify. Vivian engaged a private investigator, a woman named Greta Lund, 61 years old, former law enforcement, no-nonsense in the specific way of someone who has spent a career seeing through performances, to identify the full scope of Serena's consulting operation. Greta spent 4 weeks on it. She identified 9 clients Serena had worked with under my name. She documented the fee structure. Serena had been charging between $2,000 and $6,000 per engagement. She documented at least 4 instances of substantively incorrect financial advice. Total estimated fees collected under my identity, approximately $41,000. Total identifiable client harm from incorrect advice, we conservatively estimated $30,000 across the 4 documented cases. I paid Patricia Good back from my own savings. I want to say that clearly. Before any legal process concluded, before anything was resolved, I paid Patricia Good the money she had lost because she had been harmed by someone using my name, and I could not let that stand unremedied while systems moved slowly. Patricia cried on the phone when I told her. She said she hadn't expected it. I told her I was sorry it had happened. I was. Vivian prepared documentation for submission to the Georgia Attorney General's office, which handles professional fraud matters. She prepared a civil complaint on my behalf. She advised me to contact my employer's HR department to proactively disclose that a situation existed, that my identity was being used by a third party, and that I wanted them to be aware in case any contact reached them under my name. I scheduled a meeting with Sandra Chu for the week after I retained Vivian. I disclosed everything. Sandra's expression during that meeting was one I will not forget, the specific controlled alarm of a professional who is being told something significant and processing it in real time while maintaining the composure her role requires. She thanked me for coming to her. She said she would flag the situation internally. She said if anyone contacted Meridian representing themselves as me or using my credentials, they would know to call me immediately. I thanked her. I walked back to my desk and went back to work. 3 weeks later, on a Wednesday afternoon, Serena walked into Meridian Financial Group's lobby and told the receptionist she was Serafina Okafor-Mitchell, senior credit analyst, and that she had a meeting with one of our commercial lending managers. There was no such meeting. She had fabricated it. She had fabricated it because she had identified a potential client, a small manufacturing company looking for financial analysis services, and had apparently decided that the most effective way to establish her credibility with this client was to demonstrate that she worked at Meridian. That she had walked the halls. That the name on her credentials corresponded to an actual person in that building. What she did not know was that Sandra Chu had flagged the alert 3 weeks prior. What she did not know was that the receptionist had the specific instruction to call Sandra immediately if anyone appeared claiming to be Serafina Okafor-Mitchell. What she did not know was that while she was sitting in Meridian's lobby waiting for a manager she had invented, Sandra Chu was calling me at my desk 22 floors above her. "Sarah," Sandra said. "There is a woman in our lobby claiming to be you." I set down my pen. "I'll be right there," I said. "I want to tell you about the elevator ride down. 22 floors." I watched the numbers change and I thought about 34 years. About the February morning we were both born, 4 minutes apart. About the specific texture of growing up as someone's twin, the way your identities are always somewhat defined in relation to each other, the way people who don't know you reach for the comparison as their first framework for understanding you. About the phone call I had made 3 years ago, sitting at my kitchen table, asking her to stop. She had not stopped. I thought about Patricia Good crying on the phone. I thought about the 9 clients. I thought about $41,000. The elevator opened. I walked into the lobby of Meridian Financial Group, and I saw my sister. She was sitting in one of the chairs near the reception desk, dressed professionally. She had always known how to dress for an impression, with a leather portfolio on her lap and the posture of a woman conducting a business meeting. She was on her phone. She hadn't looked up yet. The receptionist caught my eye and gave me a small, careful nod. I walked toward Serena. She looked up when I was 6 feet away. What happened to her face in that moment was something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Not with satisfaction, I want to be precise about that. Not with triumph. With something more like grief, which is the emotion that lives underneath betrayal when you love the person who did it. She went very still. "Sarah," she said. "Serena," I said. We looked at each other for a moment that contained everything, 34 years, for minutes, every convergence and every divergence, the phone call I had made and the promise she had not kept and the $41,000 and Patricia Good and 9 clients and 3 years of watching someone use the life I had built as a costume they could put on and take off. Then I said, quietly, I need you to come with me. Sandra Chu was waiting in a conference room on the 3rd floor. Vivian was on the phone. The private investigator's file was on the table. 3 years of documentation was on the table. And standing in Meridian's lobby, my twin sister looked at me and understood, I could see it in her face, the specific comprehension of a person who has been running a play for a long time and has just turned a corner and found that the play has already ended, that it was over. Sarah, she started. Not here, I said. Come upstairs. I am not going to give you a moment-by-moment account of what happened in that conference room because some of it belongs to the two of us privately and some of it became part of a legal process that has its own record. What I will tell you is the shape of it. Serena, when confronted with 3 years of documentation, did not deny it. I think the completeness of the evidence made denial feel impossible. Greta Lund's file was thorough. My own records were thorough. When you lay something out in that much detail, when every instance is dated and documented and supported, the space for alternative narratives collapses. She cried. She said she was sorry. She said she had told herself it wasn't hurting anyone. She said she had thought she could stop before it went too far. She said the things people say when they have been caught doing something they knew was wrong and are now facing the full weight of it. I listened to all of it. Then I said something I had prepared, because I knew this moment was coming and I knew I needed to say it clearly enough that she understood and clearly enough that I could live with having said it. I love you, I said. That is not in question. What is in question is that you used my name and my reputation to take money from people who thought they were hiring me. You gave some of them bad advice under my credentials. One of them lost money she couldn't afford to lose. And you continued doing it for 3 years after I asked you to stop. She wiped her eyes. I know. I have filed documentation with the Attorney General's office, I said. That process is going to continue regardless of this conversation. I need you to understand that. Her face changed. Sarah. I cannot undo that, Serena. And I would not if I could. The people you harmed deserve the process to happen. You're going to let them charge me. I'm not letting anything happen. I documented the truth. What happens as a result of the truth is not something I'm controlling. She was quiet for a long time. What do I do? She asked finally. You cooperate, I said. Fully. With the AG's office, with the civil process, with everything. You stop, completely, immediately, permanently. And you talk to a lawyer today. Not tomorrow. Today. She nodded. Slowly. I'll pay them back, she said. The clients. I'll find a way. That would be the right thing to do, I said. I stood. I love you, I said again. That hasn't changed. What has changed is that I know now what you're capable of when you want something badly enough. And I will not pretend I don't know that. I walked out of the conference room. I went back to my desk. I sat down. I opened the credit analysis I had been working on before Sandra called me that morning. And I went back to work. The legal process that followed took 14 months. The Georgia Attorney General's office investigated. They found what Vivian and I had documented and more, 2 additional clients we hadn't identified, bringing the total to 11. The total in fees collected under my identity was revised upward to $53,000. Serena was charged with criminal identity theft, professional fraud, and 2 counts of consumer harm under Georgia consumer protection statutes. She retained her own attorney, as I had told her to. She cooperated with the investigation, as I had told her to. She pleaded guilty. The sentence included 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, full restitution to every client she had defrauded. The amount was established by the court at $61,000 including penalties, and a permanent prohibition from representing herself as a licensed financial professional or using any other person's professional credentials. She was not sentenced to prison. I want to be honest about my feelings on that. It was complicated. There was a part of me that felt the probation was inadequate given the scope and the duration. There was another part of me that was grateful she would not be incarcerated. Both parts were true simultaneously, and I have made peace with holding them both. The civil process resulted in a separate settlement. My attorney negotiated a payment schedule for the civil damages, which covered my legal fees and additional compensation for the professional harm to my reputation. Because there had been harm to my reputation. That is the part of identity theft that people underestimate. It is not just financial damage. It is the damage to a name that you have spent years making mean something specific. The damage of not knowing how many people encountered Serena and walked away with an impression of Serafina Okafor Mitchell that was not accurate. The damage of having to explain, to colleagues and clients, that the profile they may have seen was not me. That repair took time. More time than the legal process. More patience than any single confrontation could provide. I want to tell you what happened between me and Serena. We did not stop talking. I want to be clear about that because I think the simple narrative, family betrayal, sister exposed, contact severed, is not the whole truth, and I owe you the whole truth if I'm going to tell this story at all. We stopped talking for about 4 months after the conference room. I needed that distance. I needed to be around people who were not implicated in what had happened, who did not require me to manage my feelings about it in real time. My parents were devastated. That is its own separate grief that I am not going to excavate here because it belongs to them. What I will say is that my mother called me 6 weeks after the plea was entered and said, "I know what she did was wrong. I know you did the right thing. I need you to know I know both of those things." That phone call mattered more than I can explain. Serena called me on my birthday. 4 months after everything. I answered. She wished me happy birthday. She said she was in therapy. She said she understood, for the first time, the full scope of what she had done. She said she was not asking for forgiveness. She said she just needed me to know she understood. I said, "I hear you." It was the beginning of something slow and careful and not yet resolved. We talk occasionally now. Not the way we talked before. The ease is gone, replaced by something more deliberate and more honest. Maybe that is not worse. Maybe the ease was always covering something that needed to be seen. I don't know yet. We're still finding out. Here's what I want you to take from this story, because there are things I learned that I think are worth knowing. I learned that the instinct to explain away evidence is powerful when the alternative explanation involves someone you love. I received 3 years of signals before I saw the pattern, because each individual signal was small enough to attribute to administrative error. The pattern only became visible when I stopped explaining away the individual instances and let myself see the whole. I learned that documentation is not paranoia. Keeping records of my professional credentials, my financial accounts, my credit history, this was normal financial hygiene that became essential evidence. The monitoring service subscription that I had maintained for years because I work in credit analysis became the foundation of the case. My personal records became the timeline. None of it was collected with any awareness that it would one day be needed. It was simply how I managed my life. And it was enough. I learned that protecting yourself and loving someone are not mutually exclusive. I have heard people say, well-meaning people who were trying to be helpful, that coming forward against my sister was a betrayal of family. I understand that perspective. I do not agree with it. Allowing someone to harm others under your name because stopping them would cause them difficulty is not loyalty. It is complicity. And I was not willing to be complicit. I learned that the repair of a professional reputation is slower than the damage to it. It took Serena approximately 3 years to create the damage. It took me longer than that to feel certain that my name meant only what I had made it mean. That process is not complete, but it is continuing. And I learned something about my sister that I had always known in theory but had never had to face so directly, that love does not guarantee behavior. That being someone's twin, being present at every significant moment of their formation, does not mean you know what they will do when they want something badly enough and believe the cost will be borne by someone else. I knew Serena for 34 years. I did not know she would do this. Now I know. My name is Serafina Okafor Mitchell. I am 34 years old. I am a senior credit analyst at Meridian Financial Group in Atlanta, Georgia. I have a graduate degree from Emory, professional certifications that took years to obtain, and a professional reputation that I have rebuilt and protected and that belongs to me. My sister used my name for 3 years. She used it to build something she could not build honestly, and she used it until the day she walked into my building and found me waiting in the lobby. I have a credit monitoring service. I have documented records. I have an attorney I trust and a private investigator I will keep on retainer for the foreseeable future. And I have a sister who, for the first time in 34 years, knows exactly the difference between who she is and who I am. That distinction cost us both more than either of us expected. But it was the truth. And the truth, in my experience, is worth whatever it costs to establish it clearly. Thank you for being here with me through every minute of this. If it gave you something, a reminder to monitor your credit, to document your credentials, to trust the pattern when the evidence starts accumulating, then I'm glad I told it. More stories are waiting on your screen right now. Click 1. I'll meet you there.